Hi, and welcome to Ginger English. I'm Sarah, and today we have a B1 level podcast for you. Imagine sitting on a plane, thousands of feet in the air, and noticing that the old man next to you is shaking. Not from fear of flying, from something much bigger. That's exactly what happened to Liza, a flight attendant on a regular flight from Chicago. She had seen nervous passengers before, but this was different. This man wasn't afraid of turbulence. He was afraid of meeting his own daughter for the first time in 40 years. Let me tell you his story. His name was Robert. He was 72 years old with white hair and tired eyes. When Liza first saw him boarding the plane, she noticed his hands were trembling as he held his boarding pass. He kept checking his pocket again and again, like he was making sure something was still there. At first, Liza thought maybe he was scared of flying. It happens a lot. Some passengers grip the armrest the whole flight. Some close their eyes during takeoff, but Robert wasn't looking at the window. He wasn't looking at the safety card either. He was just staring straight ahead, lost in his thoughts. During the drink service, Liza stopped by his seat. "Would you like something to drink, sir?" she asked, smiling gently. Robert looked up, almost surprised, like he had forgotten where he was. "Oh, just water, please," he said quietly. Liza handed him the cup, but instead of walking away, she paused. Something told her this man needed to talk. Maybe it was years of experience. Maybe it was just instinct. "Are you doing okay?" she asked softly. Robert's eyes filled with tears immediately. "I'm about to meet my daughter," he whispered, "for the first time in 40 years. Liza froze for a second. She didn't expect that answer. 40 years? She repeated, sitting down slightly to be at his eye level. Robert nodded, took a deep breath, and started to explain. When he was young, he wasn't ready to be a father. He made a decision that changed everything. He gave his newborn daughter up for adoption. He never saw her again. He never even knew her name. For decades, he carried that guilt silently. He built a life, got married, had other children, but that first daughter was always a shadow in his heart, a question he never answered. Then, just 3 months ago, everything changed. His granddaughter convinced him to take a DNA test, just for fun, just to learn about their family history. He never imagined what would happen next. The results connected him to a woman named Emily, a woman who had been searching for her biological father for years. When Robert got that message from Emily, his hands were shaking so much he could barely read the screen. She had written a simple message. "I think you might be my biological father. I've been looking for you my whole life." He didn't answer right away. He couldn't. He sat in his kitchen for almost an hour, just staring at those words. 40 years of silence, and now this. Emily grew up in a loving family, but she always knew she was adopted. Her parents never hid it from her. They told her the truth when she was old enough to understand, and they always said the same thing. "If you ever want to find your birth parents, we will support you." But for a long time, Emily didn't feel ready. She was scared of what she might find. Would her biological parents even want to meet her? Would they reject her again, this time on purpose? Still, the question never really left her mind. Every birthday, every family photo, there was always a small part of her wondering, who do I look like? Where did I come from? When she turned 30, something shifted. Maybe it was becoming an adult fully. Maybe it was starting her own family. She decided to take a DNA test, mostly out of curiosity. She didn't expect much. Many people never find anything, but she did. The test connected her directly to Robert's family line. Within days, she found herself looking at unfamiliar names, cousins she never knew existed, and finally, a name that stopped her breath: Robert. She spent 3 days deciding whether to message him. She wrote the text, deleted it, wrote it again. Finally, she pressed send. Robert told Liza that when he read her message, 40 years of guilt hit him all at once. He wasn't the same young, scared man anymore. He was older, wiser, but the fear was still there, hiding underneath. "I don't even know if she wants to actually meet me," Robert admitted to Liza, his voice breaking slightly. "We've only talked through messages so far. Today is the first time we'll see each other in person." Liza looked at him with real compassion. She could feel how much this meant to him. This wasn't just an ordinary flight. This was the most important journey of his life. "What if she's disappointed?" Robert continued. "What if I'm not what she imagined?" Liza gently touched his arm. "You're already showing up," she said. "That matters more than you think." Robert nodded slowly, wiping his eyes with a napkin. The plane continued flying steadily through the clouds, carrying him closer to a moment he had waited for his entire life. As the flight continued, Robert started opening up more. He told Liza about the day he made that decision 40 years ago. He was only 22 years old, working 2 jobs, barely making enough money to survive. Emily's mother was his girlfriend at the time, and neither of them felt ready for a baby. "We were just kids ourselves," Robert said, shaking his head. "I know that's not a good excuse, but we panicked. We thought adoption would give her a better life than we could." He remembered the hospital room clearly, even after all these years. He remembered holding his daughter for only a few minutes before signing the papers. He remembered her tiny hand wrapping around his finger. That memory never left him, not for a single day in 40 years. "I told myself I did the right thing," Robert continued, "but I never really believed it. I just learned to live with the guilt." Liza listened carefully, refilling his water without being asked. She had heard many personal stories during her years as a flight attendant, but this one touched her differently. Maybe because Robert wasn't asking for sympathy. He was just trying to make peace with his past out loud to a stranger who happened to be kind enough to listen. "Does she know all of this?" Liza asked. "About why you made that choice?" Robert nodded. "I told her everything through messages. I didn't want to hide anything. I didn't want our first real conversation, face to face, to start with lies." Emily, on her end, had also been preparing herself emotionally. She told her adoptive parents about the meeting, and they encouraged her completely. Her mother even helped her pick out what to wear, joking that she wanted Robert to see how well she turned out. But underneath the jokes, Emily was terrified too. She kept imagining different scenarios. What if he seemed cold? What if there was no connection at all? What if meeting him made things worse instead of better? She arrived at the airport 2 hours early, unable to sit still at home. She walked around the terminal, checked the arrivals board every few minutes, and rehearsed what she might say, though none of it felt right. Back on the plane, Robert pulled out his phone and showed Liza a photo Emily had sent him a few days earlier. "Look at her smile," he said softly. "It's like looking at my mother's smile. Isn't that strange? I never even met her, and I can already see my family in her face." Liza smiled, feeling the weight of this moment. "You're going to be okay," she reassured him. "Whatever happens today, you showed up. That's the hardest part." Robert took a deep breath, staring at the photo a little longer before putting his phone away. As the flight moved into its second hour, the captain announced they were beginning their initial descent. Robert's whole body tensed up immediately. Liza noticed his breathing change, quick and shallow, like he was running out of air, even though he was sitting perfectly still. We still have some time? Liza said gently, kneeling slightly next to his seat. Landing takes a while. You don't have to be ready this second. Robert nodded, but his hands were still gripping the armrests tightly. He looked down at his phone one more time. There was a new message from Emily sent just minutes ago. I'm here. I'm waiting by gate 14. I'm so nervous I can barely stand still. He read it 3 times before showing it to Liza. She's nervous too, Liza said with a soft smile. That means she cares. People don't feel nervous about things that don't matter to them. Robert let out a shaky laugh. I keep thinking about all the years I missed, her first steps, her first day of school, her graduation. I wasn't there for any of it. You can't change the past, Liza said carefully, but you're here for this moment. That counts too. Robert looked at her, and for the first time during the whole flight, something in his eyes softened. Not just fear anymore, something closer to hope. He started telling Liza about Emily's mother, the woman he loved when he was young. They had lost contact completely after the adoption. He never knew what happened to her, whether she found happiness, whether she ever thought about that difficult decision they made together. I looked her up once, he admitted, years ago. I found out she passed away. I never got the chance to tell her I was sorry, or that I never forgot. Liza felt her throat tighten. She had seen many emotional moments on flights before, reunions, goodbyes, even a marriage proposal once, but this was different. This wasn't just emotional. It was healing. 40 years in the making. Do you think Emily knows how much courage this takes for you? Liza asked. Robert shook his head slowly. I don't think anyone really understands fear like this unless they've lived it. Rejection from your own child, it's a different kind of fear. She reached out to you first, Liza reminded him. That tells you something already. The plane dipped slightly as it continued its descent through the clouds. Outside the window, the city lights started appearing, tiny and scattered, growing brighter with every passing minute. Somewhere down there, Emily was walking back and forth near gate 14, checking her phone, counting the minutes just like Robert was. The plane began its final approach, and Robert's nervousness reached its peak. He kept adjusting his jacket, running his fingers through his hair, checking his reflection in his phone screen over and over. Do I look okay? He asked Liza, his voice almost childlike. I want her to see, I don't know, someone worth forgiving maybe? Liza knelt beside him one more time before the seatbelt sign would force her back to her seat. You look like a father who came all this way because he cares, she said. That's exactly what she needs to see. Robert's eyes filled with tears again. He wiped them quickly, embarrassed, glancing around to see if other passengers noticed. Nobody did. Everyone was busy with their own lives, their own phones, their own quiet worlds. I keep imagining the worst, Robert admitted. What if she looks at me and just sees the man who gave her away? What if 40 years of waiting means nothing the moment she actually sees my face? Liza thought carefully before answering. She wasn't a therapist. She wasn't a parent herself, but she had learned through years of watching strangers on planes that people rarely regret showing up. They regret staying away. You already told her the truth, Liza said. You didn't hide behind excuses. That already means something different than what happened 40 years ago. Robert nodded slowly, gripping his phone like it was the only solid thing in the world right now. He told Liza more about the messages he had exchanged with Emily over the past 3 months. At first, they were careful, polite, almost formal, but slowly they began sharing more. Emily sent him photos of her children, his grandchildren, laughing in a backyard he had never seen. Robert sent her old photos of his mother, Emily's biological grandmother, hoping she might see a resemblance. She has my mother's eyes, Robert whispered. I noticed it the first time she sent a photo. It's strange how blood works, isn't it? Like something invisible connecting people who've never even met. Liza smiled, feeling the depth of what Robert was carrying. This wasn't just a reunion. It was two families separated by one difficult decision, finally finding a way back to each other. The flight attendants were asked to take their seats for landing. Liza gave Robert's hand one last gentle squeeze before standing up. Whatever happens in that airport, she said, you already did the hardest part. You showed up. Robert took a deep breath, staring out the window as the ground grew closer, city streets and rooftops becoming clearer with every passing second. Somewhere below, Emily was waiting, her heart pounding just as hard as his. The plane touched down smoothly, but for Robert, it felt like his heart was still somewhere up in the clouds. He gripped the armrests as the aircraft slowed, taxiing toward the gate at what felt like the slowest speed possible. This is it, he whispered to himself, more than to Liza. As passengers began standing up, gathering their bags, Robert stayed frozen in his seat for a moment longer. Liza noticed and walked over one final time. You don't have to rush, she said. Take a breath first. Robert nodded, closing his eyes briefly. When he opened them, something had shifted. The fear was still there, but underneath it, something stronger had started to grow. Determination, maybe. Or just love. Finally finding its way to the surface after 40 long years. He stood up slowly, grabbed his small bag from the overhead bin, and joined the line of passengers moving toward the exit. His legs felt unsteady, like he had forgotten how to walk normally. Good luck, Liza said warmly as he passed her. I mean that. Thank you, Robert said, his voice cracking slightly, for listening, for everything. He stepped off the plane and into the jet bridge, each step echoing louder in his ears than it probably actually was. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Another message from Emily. I can see people coming out now. My heart is racing. Robert typed back with shaking fingers. Almost there. Give me 2 minutes. Walking through the terminal felt surreal, like watching himself from outside his own body. People rushed past him in every direction, but everything around him seemed to slow down. He scanned the crowd near Gate 14, searching for a face he had only seen in photographs. And then he saw her. Emily was standing near a pillar, wearing a light blue sweater, her hands twisting nervously in front of her. She looked exactly like her photos, but somehow more real, more alive. Her eyes were scanning the crowd too, searching just like he was. For a moment, neither of them moved. Time seemed to stretch impossibly long, as if the universe itself was giving them one last second to prepare. Then Emily's eyes locked onto his. Robert felt his breath catch in his throat. This was the face he had wondered about for 40 years. This was the daughter he had held for only a few minutes as a newborn, now standing in front of him as a grown woman, a mother herself, a stranger who somehow still felt like family. Neither of them said a word yet. They simply stood there, staring, allowing the weight of 4 decades to finally settle between them. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. Then Emily took a small step forward, her lips trembling. Robert? She asked, even though she already knew the answer. Emily, he said softly, his voice breaking on her name. Without another word, Emily closed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around him. Robert froze for a moment, overwhelmed, before finally letting himself hug her back, holding on like he was afraid she might disappear if he let go. I can't believe you're actually here, Emily whispered into his shoulder, tears already falling. I can't believe I get to see you, Robert answered, his own tears now falling freely too. They stood there in the middle of the terminal, holding each other while travelers moved around them in every direction. Some people glanced over, sensing something significant was happening, though they couldn't possibly know the full story. Others rushed past, too busy with their own lives to notice at all. When they finally pulled back, Emily studied his face carefully, like she was memorizing every detail. "You have my son's chin," she said, laughing through her tears. "I never noticed that in the photos." Robert laughed too, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "And you have my mother's eyes. I told you that already, didn't I?" "You did," Emily said. "I looked at old photos of her all week, trying to see it myself." They stood there for another moment, just looking at each other, 40 years of unspoken words hanging in the air between them. "I'm sorry," Robert said suddenly, his voice cracking. "I know it doesn't fix anything. I know an apology after 40 years probably feels too late. But I need you to know I thought about you every single day." Emily reached out and took his hand. "I'm not here for an apology," she said gently. "I'm here because I wanted to know you. The rest we can figure out together, one day at a time." Robert nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Everything he had feared on that flight, rejection, disappointment, coldness, none of it had happened. Instead, he found something he never expected, a daughter willing to build something new, instead of only mourning what was lost. "Come on," Emily said, wiping her eyes and smiling. "My kids are dying to meet their grandfather, and I made way too much food for dinner tonight." Robert laughed, a real, full laugh, the first one that felt truly light in 40 years. As they walked together toward the exit, he glanced back for just a second, as if searching for Liza somewhere in the crowd, silently thanking her for the strength she had given him 30,000 feet in the air. I still think about Liza sometimes when I imagine that story ending. She never found out what happened after Robert walked away. She simply finished her shift, went home, and carried that memory quietly, the way she had carried so many others over the years. But somewhere in that airport, a family was rebuilding itself. Robert met his grandchildren for the first time that same evening. He sat at Emily's dinner table listening to stories about a life he had missed, looking at photos spanning decades he hadn't been part of. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't simple. There were still hard conversations ahead, still wounds that needed time to heal properly. But for the first time in 40 years, Robert wasn't carrying his guilt alone anymore. Emily later said that meeting him didn't erase the questions she grew up with, but it finally gave her answers. She understood now why the decision was made, and more importantly, she understood that she had never stopped being loved, even from a distance, even in silence. What strikes me most about this story is something Liza said without even realizing how powerful it was. Showing up matters more than being perfect. Robert couldn't undo the past. He couldn't give Emily back the years they lost, but he could choose at 72 years old to finally face his fear instead of running from it one more time. I think a lot of us carry our own version of that fear. Maybe not a lost child, maybe a friendship we let fade away. A family member we stopped talking to after an argument that got out of hand. An apology we've been meaning to give for years, but keep postponing, telling ourselves it's too late now anyway. Robert's story reminds us that it's rarely too late. Uncomfortable? Yes. Frightening? Absolutely. But rarely truly too late. If this story moved you today, I'd love for you to think about someone in your own life. Maybe there's a phone call you've been avoiding. Maybe there's a message you've started typing 5 times and never sent. This story is a gentle reminder that reaching out, even after years of silence, can still change everything. Thank you so much for listening to Ginger English today. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Give this video a like if it touched your heart the way it touched mine while writing it. And please share it with someone who might need this reminder today. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.